Hello, ladies and gentlemen, my name, as ever, is Madness. So, last week we looked at the brilliant Total War Warhammer, we had a good look at the first look of the Dwarf campaign, and we experienced firsthand what is a dream come true for many of us. Total War Warhammer is only the latest in a line of Games Workshop games that have actually been pretty good. You might remember we actually looked at the Left 4 Dead clone, Warhammer End Times Vermintide, and I enjoyed that game so much I went back and streamed it a couple of times after our first look. But beyond that, we've had games like Blood Bowl 2 and Mordheim, and it's really helped push the Warhammer brand and Games Workshop's name back into a sort of solid position. Now, it's probably fair to say that Dawn of War kicked off this whole Warhammer games are good business, and while Dawn of War 3 is on the way now, that doesn't mean we should stop looking at the amazing possibilities that Games Workshop's titles can give us. There are some truly amazing things out there. Games Workshop really has to be worrying about the impact that a cheap, efficient 3D printer would have on them. The technology is clearly on the horizon, and it's something they have got to be thinking about. Games Workshop's entire business model is built around selling little bits of plastic that can't be sourced from anywhere else. But if their target audience can suddenly rip the schematics on the internet and print their own, then Games Workshop's business is in serious trouble. But what if Games Workshop was to take everything that they have, two credible universes with decades worth of lore, characters and a continuing narrative, and shift it fully into video game development? Selling shitty little plastic figures isn't the draw of the business, that's just the monetization. No, the universes are what keep people coming back to the little shops on the high street. Warhammer Fantasy and the Warhammer 40k universes and the histories are ripe with amazing ideas for video games. So here are 5 Games Workshop ideas that I think would make really amazing video games. Number 5. Deathwatch. I know what you're thinking. Oh dear, what a terrible start. Deathwatch is already a game. Oh, Madness, please do your research. And yeah, maybe it is. But with no disrespect meant to the aforementioned game, there's so much more you can do with a Warhammer game than make just another turn-based strategy game ported from a mobile system. But a brief rundown on the lore before we get into that. Deathwatch is the name given to a task force of elite space marines formed by the Ordo Xenos. This is the branch of the Inquisition that deals with alien threats. In contrast to other forces that the Inquisition deals with, the Deathwatch is not formed of any single chapter of Space Marines. Instead, the team is formed of veteran Space Marines from a variety of different chapters. Together, they're sent on the most dangerous mission to protect the human Imperium. But I think that setup would make for an amazing Left 4 Dead clone set in the 40k universe. You see, each different chapter of Space Marine would lead to a different playstyle. The Ultramarine would be your default type. He would excel in no specific area, but he'd be a jack of all trades. He'd be your bog standard boring Marine. The Space Wolf would be a melee specialist, and the Dark Angel would excel at combat with flamers, melters, and other similar weaponry. I mean, the list could go on and on and on. You've got all sorts of different chapters that you can draw from. The scope for expansion would be incredible. The aim of the game would be to form a well-balanced team and take on a variety of objective-focused maps. You fight to stop the cunning plans of the Eldar, you assassinate an upcoming Orc war leader, or you sneak into and destroy one of the hidden temples of the terrifying Necrons. These multiple campaign ideas, multiple enemy types, and you imagine the fun that you could have with a versus mode. I mean, Vermintide didn't come with one. It might be a bit much to ask when you've got multiple enemy types in this one, but just imagine being able to play as a Necron flayed one. Imagine a massive boss fight at the end of a level against an Eldar avatar. You up for that? I know I am. Number 4. The Border Princes. The Border Princes is a melting pot of cultures south of the Empire. Formed of human refugees, they generally come together from the Empire, from Bretonnia and Tylea. The region is a loosely connected series of independent princedoms, warring and plotting against each other in a bid to become the ruler of the region. I think that would be a perfect place to base a Crusader King-style grand strategy game. Now, the grand strategy genre is dominated by Paradox, so Games Workshop's best bet would be to do exactly what they did with Total War and just go, hey, Paradox, have a license. Just imagine the gameplay. From the south, you have the constant threat of Orcish invasion. From the north, the Empire squats, always waiting a chance to seize your lands. The dwarves ring your lands with their mountain fortresses. Are they friends or are they stalwart foes? How would you balance dealing with external threats against your internal politics amongst the princes? Would you band together against an emergent threat? Or sit back and hope it weakens your rivals enough to give you an advantage? These are all questions that need answering. Paradox, you gotta get on this. Number 3. Gorka Morka. Premise is really simple. Orcs are marooned on a remote planet, seeking to gather enough machinery so they can return to the Orcish horde and continue the wah. How do they do this? They race around in gangs and they fight each other. It doesn't really make an awful lot of sense, but Road Rash with Orcs doesn't have to. Gorka Morka was a much more light-hearted look at the famously grimdark 40k universe, and had a sense of humour and the silliness that you always get with Orcs. With that said, this has been attempted before. Back in the Dreamcast days, a Gorka Morka game was in development. The game was centred around combat racing and actually looked pretty good. Probably would have been shit, but since it never came out, who could say? With Games Workshop's star on the rise, I think it's definitely time to have another go at the Road Rash formula with Gorka Morka. It's time to make something fun, make something silly, and above all else, make something violent. Red ones go faster. Number 2. Hessian Rat people, rat people. The Skaven are the lurking threat in the Warhammer Fantasy universe. Relatively fragile and cowardly, but incredibly numerous, they live in a series of tunnels beneath the ground. They're an insidious and shadowy race that could easily overrun the world if only they could work together. As a member of Clan Hessian, you are an assassin. Time in the faraway lands of Cathay and Nippon changed Hessian Skaven, and they're skilled beyond any others in the ways of the kill. This would be an Assassin's Creed style game, but with a magically powered Ratman instead of a horny Italian. I mean, some might call that an improvement, but I couldn't possibly comment. Hessian would be heavily narrative driven. Starting out as a lowly assassin, you'd work your way up the ranks, avoiding the backstabbings from your fellows, and likely dishing out a few yourselves. Obviously this would need to have a very strong plot. Something based during the recent end times of the fantasy universe would likely work well, and that could well provide some very interesting Vermintide Easter eggs. Number 1. Inquisitor. Inquisitor was another smaller, specialist game. Fought at a much smaller scale than the usual 40k or fantasy wargames, Inquisitor involved creating your own Inquisitor and followers and guiding them through a free-flow campaign. What made Inquisitor truly special was the way that your actions had consequences. Characters were liable to lasting injuries, corruption by the dark powers, and true changes in their character. I'm going to say one word to you. BioWare. An Inquisitor is basically a Spectre in all but name. Please let the Mass Effect team loose on this bad boy. Give them free reign within the 40k universe, with its multitude of external and internal threats, rivalries, politics, and amazing characters. Let them make the world of Warhammer 40,000 into a Mass Effect-style adventure. We can all die happy. Let me create my own Inquisitor Shepherd. Have her resist the powers of chaos, choose to bind a demon to human form and deal with the consequences of her actions. Inquisitor is quite possibly the one license that Games Workshop has that could truly explore the really dark side of the 40k universe. BioWare or no, this game needs to be made. Honorary mention, Space Hulk Deathwing. I was actually going to mention an Alien-style multiplayer Space Hulk game, but it turns out I've actually been beaten to it. This footage is from the trailer of the game Space Hulk Deathwing, and you can watch the whole thing by clicking on the annotation on the screen. This game essentially looks like what I was hoping for. It would be a multiplayer Space Hulk game. One side plays the Terminators, the other side plays the Gene Stealers. The emergent genre of uneven multiplayer could really flourish in Space Hulk. The Terminators would be absolutely terrified of the Gene Stealers. Even though they're these massive men in giant armoured suits, the Gene Stealers are, well, they're meant to be alien. And they are. They are essentially xenomorphs, and if they get the atmosphere in this game right, it will be just beautiful. But anyway, those are my 5. Those are the 5 games I think that Games Workshop absolutely has to make into video games. I'm done with all the turn-based combat nonsense. I'm kind of done with that. I think there's been too much of it. But what do you guys think? What 5 things would you like to turn into a video game? Games Workshop or otherwise? Is there something you think I've missed? Perhaps a Gortrek and Felix game? Leave me a comment, let me know what you think. I'd be interested to know. Hit the like button, hit the dislike button if you didn't like it. I'll see you next time. Madness. Out.